Hey everyone, welcome to Handful of Daisies DIY. I'm Elaine. I can't believe that the holiday season is already over. I am not ready to take my Christmas decorations down, but it's time. So I created this "Twas the Night Before Christmas" sign in one of my holiday videos. If you missed that video, I'll link that below for you. But now that it's time to take the decorations down, I need to replace this with something new. So that's what we're going to work on today. I have another thrifted board I got from Goodwill, and we're going to use that to create something new. This is my dining room, so it will be a new dining room sign. So if you're ready, let's get started. So this is another cork board like I used in my previous video. It was originally $5.49 and then they marked it down to $2.49. So I'm going to start out by using my antiquing wax from Waverly just to darken up the wood on the outside a little bit. I prefer darker wood, and this will match my buffet in my dining room a little bit better. So I'm putting it straight on. I'm not watering it down like I normally do. And I did give it a little bit of a scuff sand first, just to make sure it would take this a little bit better. So I'm putting it on and then just wiping it back. And it gives it just a dark enough stain. So I let that dry, and then I'm going to use apple barrel and white for this sign. The cork on this board is a little bit more porous than the previous one that I did, so I'm not sure how well it's going to work. I did use chalk paint on the other board, so we'll see how the apple barrel, the acrylic paint, works. I thought the acrylic paint would fill in the more porous cork than what the chalk paint did. You can see I didn't tape up the sides like I normally do. I thought I would just try to get around the edges pretty easy. In the end, I regretted that because I did have to go back and clean that up a little bit. So if you're doing a project like this, it is worth the time to tape up the edges. And I am putting it on pretty thick, and you can see I'm using a smaller brush to get around the edges, but again, I still ended up getting paint on the wood frame a little bit. So I came back with a light sandpaper, cleaned that up, and then just put a little bit more antiquing wax on it. Sometimes you think you're saving time, but you're really not in the end. So once I went around the edges with a small brush, I did come back with my other brush and smooth everything out really well. I let that dry for several hours, so I needed to put a second coat on. So I did put my brushes in a Ziploc bag so I didn't have to wash them in between. And once that's drying, I did come over to my computer to create the vinyl decal to put on. I am going to be using a decal instead of a stencil for this. I was afraid using a stencil would end up pulling the paint up too much. So I'm using Oracle 651 permanent vinyl for this project. So I just set everything up in my Silhouette Studio, sized it to where I wanted it. I changed it to no mat because I am going to be cutting this a little bit longer than what my 24-inch mat is. So once that cut, I just pulled it out and started weeding the insides of the letters. And then I'm going to pull back the rest of the vinyl just to leave the letters. The letters on this sign are a lot bigger than the last sign I did, so that did make it a little bit easier to weed. If you haven't watched that video, I'll link that below for you so you can go back and take a look at that one as well. Because of the size of this one, I was only able to cut out the first 2 lines, and I went back and cut out the 3rd line while I was weeding this one. Now, if you've watched any of my other videos, you'll know that I typically put my transfer tape on in sections. It's so much easier when you put it in sections when you go to pull it off, especially when you have a lot of letters and you're not sure how well they're going to stick to your project. I am using clear contact paper. It's a lot cheaper to use that, and you can pick that up at Dollar Tree or Walmart. So on my 3rd line, I had a lot of vinyl left over, so I'm going to cut the excess off. That way I'm not wasting my vinyl, and I can use that for other projects. I'm just going to get this one weeded as well. I'll add the contact paper to it and attach it to the first 2 lines. Here's how it's going to look on the board. So I'm going to take my yardstick and just measure it out and make sure I've centered it. I don't always center my signs, but this one I felt like needed to be centered. So then I'm just going to pull the backing off just a little bit at a time. Just the edge, I'm going to fold it back and adhere it down. I did measure it again just to make sure it was right, and then I'll pull the rest off. That just makes it easier to get it straight. That way you're not having to pull the whole thing up trying to get it straight. I'm just going to start with the top layer and pull that back. It was giving me a little bit of a hard time sticking. Again, I wasn't sure about the acrylic paint and how it was going to work on this sign. It worked really well when I used chalk paint, but again, this sign was a lot more porous. So I had to put the paint on thicker this time. Now, any project like this that has a lot of letters, you just have to be patient with it. It does take time to get everything to stick. Like I said, this sign has a lot of letters, but not as much as the last sign I did. So it didn't take quite as long as that sign, but again, just be patient with it. I am keeping this sign for myself. It's going to be going in my dining room. Like I said earlier, if I were to sell the sign, I would probably put it in my booth for about $45. And it only cost me about $7 or $8, 10 at the most, to make this sign. Have you ever tried making a sign like this? Let me know in the comments below if you've ever used a cork board as the base for your sign. You can see my transfer tape is pulling up a little bit of the paint. So I'm going to have to go back and just touch that up afterwards. So I'm just touching up each of the letters, making sure they're adhered really well. And then I'm going to go back with my apple barrel paint and just touch up those spots where the paint came up with my transfer tape. And the one thing I like about these cork boards, they do leave a lot of texture in the sign, so it's just not a flat white. It does give you that texture, which I really like. So here's a look at how it turned out. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I do leave some of my my smaller pine trees up throughout the winter. So you can see that here. Do you leave your pine trees up? Thanks so much for watching today. I hope everyone has a wonderful and safe New Year's, and I'll see you in the next video for another DIY.